Let's talk about pisco, about real Peruvian pisco. Join me in this magical story of Peruvian pisco. The first Saturday of February is World Pisco Sour Day, a celebration that highlights Peruvian culture and cocktails. But to talk about pisco, we have to talk about wine, which is the mother of pisco, its origins and how it arrived in Peru.
The earliest origins of wine can be traced back to the ancient lands of the Caucasus, in the region that is now Armenia, Iran, and Turkey,
where humanity discovered that the grape could be transformed into something more than just a fruit.
From there, wine traveled to Mesopotamia and Egypt, civilizations that elevated it to a sacred plane.
In Egypt, wine was not an everyday drink. It was considered liquid immortality.
Reserved for pharaohs, nobles, and religious rituals. It was offered to the gods and accompanied the dead on their journey to the afterlife.
Figures like Cleopatra used it as a symbol of power and seduction, even in encounters with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony.
In the classical world, the vine was deified. Dionysus, the god of wine and fertility in Greece.
King Bacchus, for the Romans, represented life, ecstasy, and the link between the human and the divine. Wine was not a drink for the people. It was a privilege of kings, priests, and emperors. From Jesus Christ, who consecrated the wine at the welling in Cana and at the Last Supper, with the expansion of the Roman Empire, the grapevine spread throughout Europe, bringing with it agriculture, culture, commerce, and spirituality. Wine did not disappear. On the contrary, it was protected by Christian monasteries, where it became a central element of Christian liturgy.
Franciscans, the Dominicans, and other priestly orders were the great guardians of wine because wine was indispensable for the Eucharist.
When the Spanish arrived in America in the 16th century, they brought not only their swords and horses, but also their...
Evangelization was impossible without wine. Without wine, there was no Mass. Without Mass, there was no conversion to Christianity.
The first grapevines were planted in Lima, the city of kings. The grapevines were so valuable that they were guarded day and night by armed guards.
Initially, the wine came from Spain, but the journey was long and dangerous. It took a long time, and the wine deteriorated along the way.
The solution was inevitable: to bring the vine cuttings and seeds and plant them in Peruvian soil.
Wine was as important as gold. There are anecdotes that say Creoles traded their horses for jugs of wine.
The grape adapted remarkably well to Lima, Peru. These lands became blessed lands for the vine.
The Peruvians not only quickly learned how to cultivate and harvest grapes, but they also managed to produce an exceptional wine. It was so good that it won over the palates of Europe, and a lot of wine began to be exported to Spain.
The demand was so great that King Philip II took a radical decision and banned the import of Peruvian wine.
Because it was seriously affecting the income of Spanish producers.
Faced with King Philip's ban on exporting wine, producers in Peru did the unthinkable, distilling the must in copper stills.
Each drop that came out in its liquid state was the direct result of distillation without any water, 100% pure grape.
The name pisco wasn't born in a laboratory, it was born in a port. Sailors and merchants would order the drink by saying, "Give me the grape brandy from the port of Pisco." Over time, the expression was simplified and began to be called, "Give me a pisco."
The clay jars they used to store chicha were called piscus. In those same jars, they kept Peru's flagship liquor.
That is why, long before the arrival of the Spanish, the Pisco Valley, the town of Pisco, and the port of Pisco already existed.
For that reason, pisco is not an invented or generic name. It is geographical, historical, cultural, and ancestral. First, it was a Quechua word. Then it was land, clay pot, and birds. Then it was port, and now it is the elixir of life.